The morning sun barely broke through the clouds as Tyler pulled into the courthouse parking lot. At 19, he looked even younger than his age, especially today in his worn sneakers, faded jeans, and a comfortable hoodie his mom had bought him last Christmas. He grabbed his backpack from the passenger seat, checking to make sure his notebook and pens were inside. Tyler wasn't here because he was in trouble. He was here to learn. For the past 3 months, he'd been spending his mornings at the municipal courthouse, sitting quietly in the back of different courtrooms, watching cases unfold. Most people probably thought he was doing community service or waiting for his own court date, but Tyler had a different reason. He was preparing for law school, and his mentor had told him there was no better education than watching real judges and real lawyers in action. The courthouse was buzzing with its usual morning chaos. Lawyers in expensive suits rushed past him, their briefcases swinging. Families huddled together on benches, whispering nervously. Court officers called out case numbers in bored voices. Tyler made his way to courtroom 4B, where Judge Robert Hartwell presided over civil cases. Judge Hartwell had a reputation. 28 years on the bench had made him sharp, efficient, and according to most people, pretty intimidating. He ran his courtroom like a well-oiled machine. No nonsense, no delays, and absolutely no disrespect. Tyler slipped into the back row as quietly as possible. The wooden benches creaked under his weight, and a few people turned to glance at him before returning their attention to the front. He pulled out his notebook and clicked his pen, ready to take notes on whatever case was about to begin. The morning moved slowly through a property dispute between two neighbors arguing over a fence line. Tyler wrote down everything: the way the lawyers presented their evidence, the questions the judge asked, the objections raised, even the small details like how one lawyer kept adjusting his tie when he was nervous. During the first recess, Tyler noticed something interesting in the case files left on the plaintiff's table. There was a procedural issue that neither lawyer had addressed. It was a small thing, something about the timeline of when certain documents were filed, but Tyler's mind immediately went to a case he'd read about last week. He wondered if it might affect the outcome. He debated with himself for a moment. Should he say something? Would it be inappropriate? But his curiosity got the better of him. When the courtroom started to empty out, Tyler gathered his courage and walked toward the front. Judge Hartwell was still at the bench, reviewing some papers. His reading glasses sat low on his nose and his gray hair was perfectly combed. He looked every bit the authority figure he was supposed to be. "Excuse me, Your Honor?" Tyler's voice came out smaller than he intended. The judge looked up slowly, his eyes moving from Tyler's face down to his hoodie and sneakers, then back up again. His expression shifted from neutral to something closer to annoyance. "Yes?" The single word carried the weight of 100 unspoken judgments. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir. I was just observing the case and I noticed something about the filing dates that might be relevant." I was wondering if Judge Hartwell cut him off with a raised hand. "Young man, are you a party to this case?" "No, sir, are you an attorney?" Tyler hesitated. "Well, technically, yes, but I'm not." The judge's eyebrows shot up and his voice grew louder. "Technically? Son, you're either a lawyer or you're not. And looking at you, I'm guessing you're here for a traffic ticket or maybe something worse." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Let me give you some free advice. If you want to be taken seriously in this world, you need to start showing some respect. That means dressing appropriately, speaking when spoken to, and not wasting the court's time with your observations." A few people who hadn't left yet turned to watch. Tyler felt his face growing hot. "I understand, Your Honor. I just thought—" "What you think," Judge Hartwell interrupted again, "is clearly not informed by much experience or education. Maybe instead of playing dress-up in my courtroom, you should spend more time actually learning something useful. Do you even have a job?" "I work at my family's law firm, sir." The judge let out a short laugh. "A law firm? Right, let me guess, you answer phones? File papers?" He shook his head, his voice dripping with condescension. "Listen, kid. I see dozens of young people like you every week. They come in here with no respect for the system, no understanding of how hard people work to make society function. They think the world owes them something just for showing up." Tyler stood frozen, his notebook clutched against his chest. Every word felt like a slap. "I suggest you take a good look around this courtroom," the judge continued, gesturing broadly. "See those lawyers? They spent years studying. They passed one of the hardest exams in the country. They dress professionally because they respect what they do. If you want to make something of yourself, you need to do better. Much better. Tyler nodded slowly, not trusting his voice to stay steady. Yes, sir. I apologize for interrupting. He turned and walked back toward his seat, his footsteps echoing in the nearly empty courtroom. Behind him, he could hear the judge muttering something to the court clerk, followed by quiet laughter. Tyler sat down and stared at his notebook. The words he'd written earlier seemed to blur together. He'd faced plenty of challenges before, but being humiliated like that in front of strangers cut deeper than he expected. Part of him wanted to leave right then and never come back. But another part, a stronger part, made him stay. He picked up his pen and kept taking notes for the rest of the day. He didn't approach the bench again. He didn't raise his hand or ask questions. He simply watched, learned, and remembered every single word Judge Hartwell had said to him. Sometimes the best lessons come from the worst teachers. 2 weeks had passed since that humiliating day in Judge Hartwell's courtroom. Tyler had gone back several times since then, always sitting in the same back row, always keeping to himself. He never approached the bench again. But he watched everything, and he remembered. On this particular Tuesday morning, Tyler wasn't dressed in his usual hoodie and jeans. He wore a crisp navy blue suit that his mother had helped him pick out years ago when he passed the bar exam. His shoes were polished. His tie was straight. He carried a leather briefcase instead of his backpack. Today was different. Today he wasn't there to observe. Tyler arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual, his stomach tight with nerves. He made his way through security and headed straight for courtroom 4B. The same courtroom where Judge Hartwell had dismissed him like he was nothing. Inside, there was already commotion. Court staff were talking in hushed, urgent tones. A woman in her mid-40s sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Her name was Diana Rodriguez, and she was supposed to go to trial today for a wrongful termination case against her former employer. The problem was simple but devastating. Her lawyer wasn't there. Tyler's mother, Catherine Chen, was one of the best employment lawyers in the state. She'd been preparing Diana's case for months. But that morning she'd collapsed at home. An allergic reaction to something she'd eaten the night before had sent her to the emergency room. She was stable, but there was no way she could be in court today, and Diana's case couldn't wait. The statute of limitations was running out. If they didn't proceed today, the case would be dismissed forever. Diana would lose everything. Tyler walked up to the plaintiff's table where Diana sat with her head in her hands. Mrs. Rodriguez? She looked up, her eyes red from crying. Are you from Catherine's office? I'm her son, Tyler, and I'm here to represent you today if you'll let me. Diana blinked in confusion. But you're so young. I mean, no offense, but do you even have your license yet? Tyler gave her a small, understanding smile. I passed the bar exam 2 years ago. I'm a fully licensed attorney, and I've been working on your case with my mother from the beginning. I know every detail, every witness, every piece of evidence. I can do this. Diana looked at him for a long moment. She didn't have much choice, really. It was either trust this young man or lose her case entirely. Okay, she finally said, her voice shaky. Okay, let's do this. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. Judge Hartwell emerged from his chambers, his black robe flowing behind him. He took his seat at the bench and grabbed his gavel, ready to start the day. Case number 2024 CV 8847, Rodriguez versus TechCore Industries, the clerk announced. Judge Hartwell looked down at his notes. I see we have Catherine Chen listed as counsel for the plaintiff. Is Mrs. Chen present? Tyler stood up. Your Honor, Catherine Chen is unable to appear due to a medical emergency. I'm Tyler Chen, Junior Associate at Chen & Associates, and I'll be representing Mrs. Rodriguez today with her full consent. The judge's eyes lifted from his papers. For a moment, he didn't recognize the young man in the suit. Then it hit him. The color drained from his face. It was the kid in the hoodie. The one he'd humiliated. The one he'd told to get a job and learn some respect. Judge Hartwell cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Chen, I see. And you're stating that you're a licensed attorney? Yes, Your Honor. I passed the California bar exam at age 18. I've been practicing for 2 years under my mother's supervision. Tyler remained calm, professional. He pulled out his bar card and handed it to the bailiff, who carried it up to the judge. Judge Hartwell examined it closely, as if hoping to find something wrong with it. But it was legitimate. Everything was in order. On the other side of the courtroom, Richard Brennan stood up. Brennan was the defense attorney for TechCore Industries, a man who'd been practicing law longer than Tyler had been alive. He wore an expensive suit and a confident smirk. "Your Honor," Brennan said smoothly, "while I certainly respect Mr. Chen's credentials, this is a complex employment case with significant financial implications. Surely the plaintiff deserves experienced representation. Perhaps a continuance would be more appropriate." Tyler spoke before the judge could respond. "Your Honor, with respect, a continuance would result in automatic dismissal due to statute of limitations. My client has waited long enough for justice. I'm fully prepared to proceed today." Judge Hartwell sat back in his chair, clearly torn. He couldn't deny that the situation was unusual, but he also couldn't deny that Tyler was technically qualified to practice law. The judge's own embarrassment hung in the air like humidity before a storm. "Mr. Chen," the judge said slowly, "this court expects the highest level of professionalism and competence. Are you absolutely certain you're prepared to handle this case?" Tyler met his eyes without flinching. "Absolutely certain, Your Honor." There was a long pause. The whole courtroom seemed to hold its breath. "Very well," Judge Hartwell finally said, though his tone suggested he deeply regretted it. "We'll proceed, but I'll be watching closely, Counselor." "I wouldn't expect anything less, Your Honor," Tyler replied. Brennan chuckled quietly at the defense table, clearly amused by the situation. He'd been doing this for 30 years. He'd faced off against Catherine Chen before and barely won. Her teenage son? This was going to be easy. Tyler opened his briefcase and pulled out his carefully organized files. His hands were steady, but inside his heart was racing. This was it. This was his chance to prove that Judge Hartwell had been wrong about him. That appearance doesn't determine ability. That respect should be earned, not assumed. Diana leaned over and whispered, "Are you sure about this?" Tyler looked at her and nodded. "Trust me. We're going to win." Judge Hartwell banged his gavel. "Opening statements. Mr. Chen, you may begin." Tyler stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked toward the jury box. Every eye in the courtroom was on him. The young lawyer who looked like he should still be in college. The kid in the hoodie who'd been dismissed and mocked. But when he opened his mouth to speak, something shifted in the room. His voice was clear, confident, and absolutely certain. The real trial was about to begin. Tyler walked slowly toward the jury box, his footsteps the only sound in the silent courtroom. 12 faces stared back at him, some curious, some skeptical. He could feel Judge Hartwell's eyes boring into his back, waiting for him to stumble. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Tyler began, his voice steady and clear. 3 years ago, Diana Rodriguez was living her dream. She had a good job at TechCore Industries, a company she believed in. She worked hard, stayed late, did everything right, but then she discovered something that changed everything. He paused, letting the words sink in. This was a technique his mother had taught him. Give the jury time to think. Don't rush. She found out that her supervisors were falsifying financial reports. Real money was being moved around to hide losses. Real investors were being lied to. And when Diana did what any honest person would do, when she reported it to Human Resources, she was fired 3 weeks later. Tyler walked along the jury box, making eye contact with each person. The company will tell you it was a coincidence. They'll say Diana was let go for poor performance. But the evidence will show you the truth. Diana Rodriguez lost her job because she refused to be silent about fraud. He returned to his table and sat down, short, simple, and powerful. No fancy legal words. Just the truth. Judge Hartwell shifted in his seat. "Mr. Brennan, your opening statement." Brennan stood up with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He was tall, well-dressed, and spoke with the kind of smooth voice that came from years of practice. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is a simple case of a disgruntled employee trying to blame everyone but herself." Brennan's tone was almost friendly, like he was talking to old friends. Ms. Rodriguez was repeatedly warned about her performance issues. Her supervisor documented multiple problems. When the company finally had to let her go, she invented this whistleblower story to avoid taking responsibility. He smiled at the jury. "The defense will show clear evidence of Ms. Rodriguez's performance issues going back months before she made any complaints. This isn't about exposing fraud. This is about someone who couldn't do her job and wants someone else to pay for it. Brennan sat down, looking pleased with himself. Mr. Chen, Judge Hartwell said, and there was something sharp in his voice. Call your first witness. Tyler stood. The plaintiff calls Michael Stevens to the stand. A man in his 50s walked nervously to the witness stand. He was sworn in and sat down, fidgeting with his tie. Mr. Stevens, can you tell the jury where you work? Tyler asked. I'm the Assistant Director of Human Resources at TechCore Industries. And you were working there when Diana Rodriguez filed her complaint about financial irregularities? Yes, I was. Tyler pulled out a document. I'm showing you Exhibit A. Is this the formal complaint Mrs. Rodriguez filed on March 15th? Stevens glanced at it and nodded. Yes, that's it. And what did you do with this complaint? Stevens hesitated. I forwarded it to my supervisor and to the legal department. Did anyone investigate Mrs. Rodriguez's claims? I believe so, yes. Tyler raised an eyebrow. You believe so? Mr. Stevens, you're the Assistant Director of Human Resources. Wouldn't you know if an investigation happened? Objection, Brennan called out. Argumentative. Judge Hartwell looked at Tyler for a long moment. The judge seemed to be hoping Tyler would make a mistake, give him a reason to sustain the objection. But Tyler had phrased it correctly. Overruled, the judge said, though he didn't look happy about it. The witness will answer. Stevens shifted uncomfortably. There were some preliminary discussions, but I don't know if a full investigation was completed. Tyler nodded slowly. Interesting. So Diana reports potential fraud, and you're not sure if anyone actually looked into it. But you do know what happened next, don't you? She was terminated. 3 weeks after filing the complaint. 3 weeks, Tyler let that hang in the air. And in your 10 years at TechCore, had Diana Rodriguez ever received a negative performance review before that? Stevens looked down. Not to my knowledge. Not to your knowledge, Tyler repeated. So she had a clean record for years, reports fraud, and suddenly she's fired for poor performance. Does that seem odd to you, Mr. Stevens? Objection. Brennan was on his feet. Calls for speculation. Sustained, Judge Hartwell said quickly. Mr. Chen, stick to the facts. Tyler smiled slightly. Of course, Your Honor. No further questions. As Stevens left the stand, Tyler could see Diana relaxing a bit at the table. The first witness had gone well. Brennan stood for cross-examination, but Stevens had already revealed enough. The jury had seen a human resources director who couldn't answer basic questions about his own case. The rest of the morning moved quickly. Tyler called 2 more witnesses, each one carefully chosen. He asked short, direct questions. No long speeches. No showing off. Just facts presented clearly. But Judge Hartwell wasn't making it easy. Every objection Brennan made, the judge seemed to consider extra carefully when it was Tyler speaking. Questions that would normally be routine were scrutinized. Tyler had to cite specific case law for things experienced lawyers took for granted. During the lunch recess, Diana pulled Tyler aside in the hallway. Is he doing that on purpose? The judge, I mean. He seems really hard on you. Tyler loosened his tie slightly. He's testing me. Every question, every ruling, he wants to see if I really know what I'm doing. And do you? Tyler looked back at the courtroom doors. Yeah, I do, and I'm going to prove it. When they returned after lunch, Tyler noticed something. The court reporter, an older woman who'd been working there for years, gave him a small nod of encouragement. One of the bailiffs smiled at him briefly. Even some of the jury members seemed more engaged, leaning forward when he spoke. Word was spreading through the courthouse. The kid who got humiliated was back, and he was holding his own against one of the best defense attorneys in the city. Brennan called his first witness, a supervisor from TechCore who claimed Diana had been late multiple times and made errors in her reports. Tyler's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Harrison, you said Mrs. Rodriguez was late several times. Do you have documentation of these instances? It was noted informally. Informally. So no written warnings, no official documentation, nothing in her personnel file? Harrison shifted. We have a casual workplace culture. A casual workplace culture, Tyler repeated. But somehow, right after she reports fraud, you remember all these informal problems. Isn't it true that you never mentioned any performance issues until after she filed her complaint? I don't recall the exact timeline. Tyler pulled out another document. Your deposition from 3 months ago. Page 47. You were asked if you'd ever discussed performance issues with Mrs. Rodriguez before March. You said, and I quote, no, there was never a need. Does that refresh your memory? The courtroom went silent. Harrison's face turned red. "No further questions," Tyler said quietly. As he returned to his seat, Tyler caught Judge Hartwell's expression. The skepticism was still there, but something else too. Something that looked almost like respect. The battle was far from over, but Tyler was winning. The second day of trial started differently. When Tyler walked into the courtroom, he noticed people in the gallery who hadn't been there before. Other lawyers, courthouse staff, even a few law students. Word had spread about the young attorney going head-to-head with Richard Brennan. Judge Hartwell noticed too. He gave the growing audience a stern look before taking his seat. "Mr. Chen," the judge said, "call your next witness." Tyler stood up. The plaintiff calls Patricia Morrison to the stand. A woman in her early 60s walked confidently to the witness stand. She wore a simple gray suit and had the kind of face that had seen a lot in life. After being sworn in, she sat down and looked directly at Tyler. "Ms. Morrison, can you tell the jury where you work?" "I used to work at TechCore Industries. I was the senior financial analyst for 8 years. I left the company 6 months ago." Tyler walked closer to the witness stand. "And why did you leave?" "I couldn't be part of what they were doing anymore. The financial manipulation, the false reports. I tried to speak up internally, and when that didn't work, I resigned." Brennan shot up from his chair. "Objection. This witness is clearly biased and has an axe to grind with my client." Judge Hartwell looked at Tyler. "Mr. Chen?" "Your Honor, Ms. Morrison's employment history is relevant to establishing the pattern of behavior at TechCore. Her motivations for leaving go directly to the heart of this case." The judge considered this. Tyler could see him weighing whether to make things difficult or follow the law. Finally, he nodded. "Overruled. The witness may answer," Tyler continued. "Ms. Morrison, did you ever work directly with Diana Rodriguez?" "Yes, we worked together frequently. Diana was one of the most thorough and honest people in the department." "And did you witness the events surrounding her termination?" Patricia nodded, her expression growing serious. "I did. When Diana discovered the discrepancies in the quarterly reports, she came to me first. I looked at what she found, and she was absolutely right. Numbers had been shifted around to make the company look more profitable than it actually was." Tyler pulled out a stack of documents. "I'm showing you exhibits 12 through 18. Can you identify these?" Patricia put on her reading glasses and examined the papers. "These are the original financial reports that Diana and I found. You can see here and here, where the numbers don't match what was eventually reported to investors." The jury leaned forward, trying to see the documents. Tyler handed copies to the bailiff to distribute. "And what happened when Diana reported this?" "At first, nothing. Then she started getting called into meetings with her supervisor. They'd criticize small things, insignificant mistakes anyone could make. It was clear they were building a case against her." "Did you speak up?" Patricia's voice grew softer. "I tried. I went to management and confirmed everything Diana had found. They thanked me for my concern and told me they'd handle it. 2 weeks later, Diana was fired. A month after that, I was told my position was being eliminated due to budget cuts. But you said you resigned." "I did, because I knew what was really happening. They were cleaning house, getting rid of anyone who knew the truth." Brennan's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint Patricia as a disgruntled former employee, someone bitter about losing her job. But she didn't crack. Every answer was calm, measured, and consistent. When Patricia stepped down, Tyler could see the impact on the jury. This wasn't just about Diana anymore. This was about a company willing to destroy anyone who threatened their secrets. Tyler called 2 more witnesses that afternoon. Each one added another piece to the puzzle. An accountant who had questioned the same reports. A former intern who had been told to destroy certain documents. By the end of the day, the picture was clear. During a brief recess, the court reporter approached Tyler in the hallway. Her name badge read Mrs. Chen, no relation. "I've been working in that courtroom for 15 years, she said quietly. "I've never seen anyone handle Brennan like you are." "Your mother must be very proud," Tyler smiled. "I hope so. I called her during lunch. She's feeling better. Wanted to come down here, but the doctors won't let her leave yet." "Well, you tell her she raised a fine lawyer." Back in the courtroom, Brennan began his defense. He called expert witnesses who tried to explain away the financial discrepancies. He brought in character witnesses for TechCore's executives. But Tyler was ready for all of it. When Brennan called the CEO of TechCore to the stand, the courtroom got very quiet. James Foster was a man who commanded attention. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of confidence that came from years of power. Brennan asked him softball questions about the company's integrity and Diana's performance. Foster answered smoothly, painting a picture of a well-run company and a problematic employee. Then it was Tyler's turn. Mr. Foster, you testified that you were unaware of any financial irregularities at TechCore. Is that correct? That's correct. Tyler walked over to his table and picked up a single sheet of paper. I'm showing you Exhibit 23. This is an email from Patricia Morrison to you, dated March 20th. Can you read the subject line for the jury? Foster's confident expression flickered. It says urgent concerns about Q4 financial reports. And did you receive this email? I receive hundreds of emails a day. That's not what I asked, Mr. Foster. Did you receive this specific email, yes or no? Foster shifted in his seat. Yes, I received it. And did you read it? A long pause. I may have. Tyler moved closer. Mr. Foster, this email specifically mentions Diana Rodriguez's findings. It asks for an immediate investigation, and according to the metadata, you opened this email the same day it was sent. So let me ask again, did you read it? Judge Hartwell leaned forward slightly, watching Foster carefully. Yes, Foster finally admitted. I read it. So you were aware of the allegations of financial manipulation? I was aware that an employee had made some claims, yes. And what did you do about it? I forwarded it to the appropriate departments. Tyler nodded slowly. You forwarded it to the same executives who were involved in the manipulation, the same people who had the most to lose if the truth came out. Does that sound like a proper investigation to you? Objection. Brennan was on his feet. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Hartwell said, but his tone had changed. He was looking at Foster with new eyes. Tyler continued. Mr. Foster, isn't it true that 3 weeks after receiving this email, you personally approved Diana Rodriguez's termination? That was a department decision. Tyler pulled out another document. This is the termination authorization form. It requires CEO signature for all employees who have filed formal complaints. Your signature is right here. So again, you personally approved her firing, correct? Foster's jaw tightened. Yes. No further questions. As Foster left the stand, Tyler caught Judge Hartwell's eye. The judge gave him the smallest nod. Not friendly, not warm, but acknowledgement. Recognition that what he'd just witnessed was excellent lawyering. The trial would conclude tomorrow with closing arguments. But everyone in that courtroom knew something had shifted. The case was no longer about whether Tyler could handle being a lawyer. It was about whether justice would be served. The final day of trial felt different. The courtroom was packed. Every seat in the gallery was taken, with people standing along the back wall. Tyler had arrived early, going over his notes one last time. Diana sat beside him, more hopeful than she'd been in months. Judge Hartwell entered and surveyed the crowded room. This is not a spectator sport, he said firmly. Anyone who disrupts these proceedings will be removed. Mr. Brennan, your closing argument. Brennan stood and approached the jury with his usual confidence. He'd been doing this long enough to know how to recover from a bad day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's cut through all the emotion and drama and look at the facts. Ms. Rodriguez was terminated because she wasn't performing her job adequately. That's it. That's the whole story. He walked along the jury box, making eye contact with each person. Yes, she made some allegations about financial problems, but where's the proof? Where are the criminal charges? Where's the SEC investigation? If there was real fraud, wouldn't the authorities be involved? He spread his hands wide. The plaintiff wants you to believe in a massive conspiracy, but what we have is a simple employment decision that she disagreed with. Brennan spoke for 20 minutes, his voice smooth and persuasive. He was good. Tyler had to admit that. When Brennan finally sat down, he looked satisfied. Judge Hartwell turned to Tyler. Mr. Chen, your closing argument. Tyler stood up slowly. He didn't rush to the jury. Instead, he took a moment looking at each of their faces. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. 3 years ago, Diana Rodriguez had to make a choice. She could stay quiet, keep her job, pretend she didn't see what was happening. Or she could do the right thing knowing it might cost her everything. Tyler walked toward the jury box. She chose the truth, and they destroyed her for it. He let that sink in before continuing. Mr. Brennan asked where the criminal charges are, where the investigations are. But that's not what this case is about. This case is about whether an employee can be fired for reporting fraud. The law says no. The law says you can't punish someone for being honest. Tyler picked up one of the financial documents from his table. You saw these reports. You heard Patricia Morrison explain how the numbers were manipulated. You heard the CEO admit he knew about Diana's concerns and did nothing. Actually, that's not true. He did do something. He fired her. He walked slowly along the jury box. They want you to believe Diana was a bad employee. But for 7 years, she had perfect reviews. For 7 years, she was promoted, given raises, trusted with important work. Then suddenly, 3 weeks after reporting fraud, she's terrible at her job. Does that make sense to you? Tyler stopped and looked directly at the jury. This isn't about conspiracy theories. This is about a woman who saw something wrong and had the courage to speak up. And this company, this powerful corporation with expensive lawyers and unlimited resources, tried to make her disappear. His voice grew stronger. But she didn't disappear. She's here. She's fighting. And now you have the power to tell her that doing the right thing matters, that honesty matters, that people are more important than profits. Tyler walked back to his table. Diana Rodriguez lost her job, her reputation, her financial security, all because she refused to be silent. The only question now is whether you'll be silent too, or whether you'll speak up for what's right. He sat down. The courtroom was absolutely quiet. Judge Hartwell cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'll now give you instructions on the law. The judge spent 30 minutes explaining the legal standards, what the jury needed to consider, how to evaluate the evidence. Tyler noticed something in his tone. The contempt from that first day was gone. Judge Hartwell was being fair, neutral, professional. The jury filed out to deliberate. Diana grabbed Tyler's hand. Thank you, she whispered. Whatever happens, thank you. The waiting was the hardest part. Tyler and Diana sat in the hallway outside the courtroom. An hour passed, then 2. Tyler's phone buzzed. It was his mother. How did it go? She texted, waiting for the verdict. How are you feeling? Much better. I wish I could be there. I'm proud of you, Tyler. He smiled at the screen. Thanks, Mom. I learned from the best. 3 hours after they'd started deliberating, the bailiff came out. We have a verdict. Tyler's heart raced as they returned to the courtroom. The jury filed back in, their faces unreadable. Judge Hartwell took his seat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a middle-aged teacher, stood up. We have, Your Honor. What say you? In the matter of Rodriguez versus TechCore Industries, we find in favor of the plaintiff. We award damages in the amount of $240,000 in lost wages, and we recommend full reinstatement to her position. Diana burst into tears. Tyler felt a wave of relief wash over him. They'd won. Actually won. Judge Hartwell thanked the jury and dismissed them. As people started to file out, he said, Mr. Chen, please approach the bench. Tyler walked up slowly, not sure what to expect. Brennan had already packed up and left, looking frustrated. Judge Hartwell looked at Tyler for a long moment. Mr. Chen, I owe you an apology. Tyler blinked in surprise. Your Honor, you don't. Yes, I do. The judge's voice was firm. 2 weeks ago, when you came to my courtroom, I judged you based on your appearance. I made assumptions about who you were and what you were capable of. I was wrong. Completely wrong. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. I've been a judge for 28 years. I tell juries every single day not to make snap judgments, not to let bias cloud their thinking. And then I did exactly that to you. I appreciate that, Your Honor, Tyler said quietly. You conducted yourself with exceptional skill and professionalism throughout this trial. You honored your client, you respected the court, and you proved that I was a foolish old man who let appearances fool him. Judge Hartwell extended his hand. You're going to have a remarkable career, counselor. Tyler shook his hand. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. As Tyler turned to leave, the judge said one more thing. Tyler, next time you come to observe in my courtroom, you're welcome anytime. And if you have questions or observations, I want to hear them. Tyler smiled. Yes, Your Honor. Outside the courthouse, Diana hugged Tyler so tightly he could barely breathe. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Tyler corrected her. You were brave enough to fight. His phone rang. his mother. "Tell me everything." As Tyler recounted the verdict, he looked back at the courthouse. He thought about that day 2 weeks ago, standing at the bench, being humiliated in front of strangers. How much that had hurt, how angry he'd felt. But he'd used that anger as fuel. He'd prepared harder, studied more, made sure he knew every detail of this case better than anyone else in that courtroom. The judge's disrespect had pushed him to be better. Sometimes the worst moments teach the best lessons. Tyler walked to his car, already thinking about the next case, the next challenge. He was young, he looked even younger, and people would probably underestimate him again. But that was okay. He'd proven he could handle it. Not just to Judge Hartwell or to Diana or to the jury. He'd proven it to himself. And that was the victory that mattered most.